What's going on, guys? Welcome back to E30 Things, or Denver Beer and Oil. It's like 2 days after I did the steering rack upgrade and more parts came in. So today it's going to be all about gauges. I've got the Garagistic gauge pod mount chilling out here, and then a bunch of VDO senders and stuff. I'm going to go ahead and tap in here for the coolant on the side of the radiator. It's not ideal, but there's a bunch back there on the back of the M60 that I need to get to and do things with so I can install it properly and keep a gauge in the dash. This was my wiring for the gauge in the dash. I believe it's dead because I haven't had a gauge since like October. So that's where that is as far as coolant. I'm doing oil pressure and oil temp as well. So on the other side, I'm going to delete the just on-off oil pressure switch that's in the filter housing, and then upgrade it to a sending unit and temperature T deal that I've got in that box, which should already be open. So why don't we do that right now? All right, so here's what I'm working with on this side. It's female T. I've got a coupler male. It's all 1/8 inch NPT. And then, you know, your temp sender and your pressure sender. The plan here is I have a M12 adapter, so it's 1/8 inch FPT to M12 by 1.5, and I'm hoping my memory serves me right. That's the size that goes in there. It was either that or M14, so we're gonna find out as far as that goes. And then these brackets, or these gauges, they fit right in front of the shifter, all neat and pretty like so. So those will go in last. I'm planning on routing the wires. I'll just leave that there. I'm planning on routing the wires. At least this sender is going to go up through, follow this main harness, and then through into the firewall. There's a grommet there. That looks convenient. I might just do that. And then on the other side, I could go up and around this side of the car and try and keep it as tucked as possible. Not that it's the prettiest. This is my zip tie pandemic special emergency mask. So I got that holding the brake reservoirs up, and I got this strut bar on, which has been a night and day difference with this car. So that's where I'm at. I'm gonna get to wiring, I think. Okay, so literally nothing has changed from the last time I updated, but I just got off the phone from Chris, and this is not a one wire to the gauge affair. Apparently that's only for analog or something like that. So I'm now going to tap off of the violet wire in my ignition switch, and then I'm going to run it down to the center console, where the ground will already be connected to the cigarette lighter. But yeah, so it's going to go from the violet ignition switch, so position 1 on the key, down to the center console, and then I'm going to wire up the lights. I'm actually going to wire up on the switch light circuit that I use for my shift knob. It's like an M Sport 6-speed one, kind of hot boy. So that'll all light up together. That'll be on a separate circuit, and then the circuit for the gauges, that will all be together as well. And I think they can share a common ground, so it should be okay. Either way, it's ain't nothing to it but to do it. So let's go. Okay, so here's what we've got. I've got it all wired in, fished through in the bottom there. I didn't do the coolant, just the oils, because I don't have coolant on me, and to do the radiator I'd have to refill it, so it wasn't about that. But regardless, this red right here that's completely open-ended is a switch 12 volt coming off of that violet from the ignition switch. And then back over here, that yellow crimp clamp is to 2 ground circuits for the gauges. So it'll do both the light circuits and the gauges themselves. Over here, these many wires are for all the sending units. I realized that aside from this red wire, but I realized that with these all being black, I don't know which goes to where, so I got to go and fish that out before I can actually wire up the gauges. This is the positive light circuit that's linked up to the light switch. There was a bulb down there that was kind of just sitting there. I think it had burned out, so I pulled that and then tapped in there for the light circuit, so it should light up with everything else quite nicely. Over here, another positive circuit just jumping through, and that's again just going to go to this violet down here. And yeah, it should be gauges. So gonna go ahead and finish it up and hopefully be done here soon. Yep. this is kind of what it turned out, as the gauge pods are sticking out the bottom, which isn't ideal. I'm wondering if it's because I have a ton of wires behind there. I never trimmed anything down, solely because I'm going to be under there again, and if something falls out or I need to recrimp something, I'm just leaving some room for error. That'll go away once I get the coolant temp sensor going in there, which should hopefully happen in like the next week or so. But what's going on is I've got it to the lights, so lights turn on, they turn on, looks pretty neat. Center one looks like it's the brightest, but I'm just gonna go ahead and ignore that. And then I go ahead and turn on the car, and oil temp's low, but you'll get a pressure reading pretty quick. You can see right there in the middle. Pretty happy with that. A lot more peace of mind. So I think out front, this is, you know, thermometer, pressure sender. And then I have it actually wired over there for the coolant thermometer too, and it all comes back down here through the firewall, and it's good to go. You might be wondering about the state of oil around the engine bay, and well, so to get this fitting on and make it all good, I had to loosen up this nut, and I loosened up the nut, put on the fitting, wired it. I was like, oh, it's time to test it. And didn't actually tighten that up, so oil went fucking everywhere, and it was great, and it is great. We're trying to get away from kitty litter here at the shop, so I've got a shit ton of rags, and I need to go buy more because rags just don't cut it. And I just oiled my intake and everything, so it's lovely. It's a project. Either way, I'll see you guys when it's time to do the coolant, and then we'll find out if this thing's overheating all the time. I have no idea. And I've been thinking that the thermostat has just failed open because on the highway I'll be driving and I'll lose heat. So I'm fingers crossed that's what it is, because that's an easy fix and I haven't been overheating my engine without knowing it. Finally too, I have an E-fan installed, and in the oil mess somewhere down amongst this grossness is the leads for that, and then I'll do a relay. You know what, I'll do that in this video as well. So I'll be back in 3, 2, 1. Alright, so I just got home. It's 2:30. This is the E30. It's doing well. So this is gonna need some backstory. Looks like the E30 V8 is gonna be down for quite a while. Alright, cool. It's backstory time. So when I originally built this engine back in January, I was in the mode of kind of just doing every single seal I possibly could on the engine, even if it didn't need it. And if you guys aren't familiar, I did the M60 Hybrid, which is the 4.4 block from the M62, and then pretty much every single thing else M60. So like the timing, the heads, and by timing I mean like the timing, tensioner, chain setup. Regardless, I went in, basically decided to reseal the entire thing, and on the block there is a plate with, you know, 16 million 10 mils on it, and it's just a coolant passage for the block in the back. Completely unnecessary to service. I don't think I've ever seen one of those leaking, and yet I was like, oh, I'm just gonna go in there and fuck with it. So I did that, and in the process of taking off the bolts, I snapped 2 bolt heads, and we tried extracting it. It broke the extractor bit, and at that point I was kind of just done with messing with it. A little bit less experienced than I am now as far as cars, and so I think I slapped on a bunch of RTV, the gasket, and then just tightened it up with the remaining bolts. That was a pretty big oopsie, but I said in that video it was 2 a.m. and the car just started overheating. So I got the gauges done that night, drove home, and noticed that my oil temp never even got close to operating temperature. So for sure, thermostats failed open in my mind, at least. Prior to driving it with the gauges, I kept the blower motor on hot all the time, just because I was terrified if it was overheating. I didn't want to mess with it. I was like, it's not getting to operating temperature. Here's the plan. I'm just going to leave the blower motor off. I'm going to idle it. I'm just going to like do every single thing I can to try and heat it up to get it to oil temp, just because I wanted to see, you know, if it's been fine, then it should be fine at operating temperature, and I haven't had it at operating temperature, which, I mean, we all know it's bad for the oil, it's bad for the engine, all that stuff. So out of curiosity, let's heat up the engine. And I did that, and about every single thing in the cooling system failed. So nothing was up to snuff as much as it should have been. I think the only reason it was holding on is because the car wasn't actually heating up. So the cooling system never actually properly pressurized, aside from that one day at the racetrack. This car is going to be down for a while. I'm putting together a plan. I'd like to just really get every single thing done on the cooling system, get an actual expansion tank that fits in there, looks good. Proper hoses. The upper radiator hose split on that night. The lower radiator hose started leaking. So it's basically, you know, new hoses, new coolant crossover, new expansion tank, and I'm gonna have to pull the engine and drill out those bolts that snapped, retap it with something slightly larger, and then put it back in and hope to God it doesn't leak again. When I did that back plate, everybody, the entire feeling was, this is not going to hold, you're going to have to do this again. And in that moment I kind of said, well, we'll see, and also if it does, that'd suck, but I gotta go to TexFest. So it made it, it fulfilled its goal to get to TexFest, but now the goal is to just have a daily driver V8 E30. Not sure when there's going to be another E30 video, but it's dead for a hot minute and just sitting outside. It's really, really cold these next few weeks, so I'm not necessarily hurt by it. I've got my E38. I might do some content on that. It's going to be really exciting stuff. It's about the rattiest E38 you've seen, and it needs a new inner tie rod steering assembly type dealio because it death wobbles all the time. So if you guys want to see some really, really low budget quality E38 content, I got you. E38s are where I got my start into Beamers, so there's a little bit of passion there for me too. Thanks for watching this video, guys. Stay tuned. The next one will be probably pretty in-depth as far as just making sure everything works, it all bolts together, it's nice, it's clean, and anything that's left undone from the first time I built the car will be caught up on this time around. So stay tuned, guys. Thanks for watching.